Hey folks, Scott Fisher here, and this month I'm going to take you through my painting for Wynwood Brewery for their Artist Series beers. This one's called Blood of the Dragon, and it was a treat to do this and collaborate with the brewery. They've been doing this for a little while now. Here's one by Ron English called Delusional Ale, which is just such a great can, so I can't wait to hold my own in my hand. So far so good, folks. The plan is exactly this. I ghosted out my drawing using acrylic ink, or in this case I went ahead and used the golden fluid titanium white, so I could just barely see my drawing through there. And now I'm going in and inking it with a custom mixed up brown purple FW acrylic ink. And the idea is that I want an entire ink of this nice and clean, because I think we might need that for the line art in the actual beer label, because there's some special effects I want to try to do on this thing, and it'd be nice to have a super clean drawing. So we're going to ink it all, then we're going to scan it, and then we're going to destroy it all with paint. All right. Hey folks, Scott Fisher here. Everything's cruising right along with the dragon. So basically the idea was, after we did the washout of the rough sketch and we inked in the main figure, it was time to ink the flowers, which is hibiscus. I'm using a brush for most of this because I wanted it to be really fluid, and if you notice, I'm actually inking with a lighter value than I did the armored figure as well. I wanted to have a little bit of contrast, and you'll see that I'll actually break out another color as well. That's sort of an alizarin crimson at that moment. Had to do the hair that's flowing behind the dragon's face, so we had to fill out the mouth a little bit and work out the flag a little bit. But now we get serious, and we got to do these scales. Man, there's a lot of scales. We got to do them. But you know, and they compress in space and they go around, and I don't want the scales to be exactly the same everywhere, because that gets a little bit monotonous, and I really want to shake them up and have them various sizes and various scales and some random ones thrown in there, plus throwing those creases right where the neck is bending forward. Now we're working on the head, and if you notice, I'm using the liner brush for a lot of this rough in, but I'm laying the brush on its side sometimes and actually pulling it and picking it up so that I can get these really sharp little lines. It's a cool way to work to get some really expressive moves. But now I've moved to the actual dip pin because I need to get more detail, because the cross-hatching is happening in the armor. And now that this face is so close, the dragon's face is so close, I wanted it to match the armor a little bit. But then finally we get out a fan brush and knock in some serious dark. Boom, 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 boom. We're just hammering them to give it that little accent. We're drawing a dragon fruit up at the top of the flag. And there you go, guys. That's the vlog for the day. Next, we black out the negative space and we keep going. Next up in the process is probably one of my funnest parts, and it's simple, but I love doing it, and that is filling in that negative space between the drawing. This is that moment where you see if your silhouettes are popping, all of that good stuff. It's super easy, it's oddly meditative, and can take a long time when you have a ton of tiny little negative space, but I love doing this part. Dudes, what's happening? Scott Fisher here. Let's continue the dragon vlog. Oh yeah, that's a dragon fruit. That's a dragon fruit. Well, you can see the painting is actually all done. I did all kinds of stuff to this, but this video is going to be talking about laying in my base middle values. You can see that I'm just splashing color all over this thing and going nuts with it. But again, base middle value. So I'm just trying to figure out exactly what the underlying middle value for the flowers is going to be, the dragon, all of that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go detailing in on the dragon scales and just trying to create a whole variety of scales. So you can see I'm much lighter in this area in here, and you know, they got darker as they rounded back in space. You can see that some of these down here have a lot of swirls in them, and then other ones I try to keep a little calmer, a little quieter. Some of them have like a white outline around them, whereas some of them it's much darker, and the whole idea was that I just wanted to have a variety of surface. Time for some flower power. Exactly, we got to get these flowers done. Now there's a lot of them. Now I played a graphic game here where I wanted everything about the flowers to be red. That's an artist's choice. This is an edit that I made. Naturally there'd be green in the leaves and that sort of thing, but for that graphic punch I wanted that solid red, as solid as I could possibly make it. Still, I'm dealing with my base middle value of the red, which you can see right there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in one step darker, right? You can see me just rocking those lines, feeling them around, getting that thing going, and then in a few spots I'm going to start going up in value to a highlight, and it's pretty amazing what you can get done with just 3 values. Again, this is for a beer label, so I want the graphicness to come through, and I think that the linearness of these lines, instead of say a full buttery render, would be a good thing to have going on something that's going to be reproduced so small and wrapped around a can. And then I used a bigger brush here and there to scumble in some paint. Now it's time to get to the real meat and potatoes of this whole thing and finish off the dragon here. Now, I made a conscious decision. I wanted the claw to be lighter than what was going on behind it. So you can see I went in with those highlights first on that claw. Now, nothing behind that claw is going to go to that level of contrast for the most part. There might be a few exceptions here and there, but in general, I want the silhouette of that claw to pop off of those scales. But let's really get in on the face. Now, this is the fun part. You can see it's ghosted out. We can still see my drawing underneath there. I'm going in with a darker value, and I'm reestablishing those darks. It's easy to just get in there with those darks first. And once I get those going, I go the other direction. Once again, I get out the highlighting. Then sometimes I find a little bit of middle value, like the red I'm doing on the inside of the tongue where it's sort of shadowed off there. I'm using an Alpha 6 Corporation liner brush, which is awesome. It's just a big, long thing that you would use for pinstriping even. And I'm thinking about that secondary light coming in now and hitting the back side of the head. So you got that cool light in the front, you got a warm light coming from behind, and you get that bounce. So I wasn't quite done with the dragon. I need to introduce another color. I was getting bored of that same cool purple everywhere, so we got a little bit of more of a magenta pinky color going on, and I used like an alizarin crimson to knock in those little darks along the neck. But now it's time to do the figure. Figure time is always the funnest time, and what I'm doing is I'm scumbling in using sort of it's called shading gray, I think, via golden, and I'm using that to scumble in the middle value that you see there, which has some modeling to it, right? But I haven't done any serious highlighting. And then I did the gold filigree as well. I break out the nib pen, I dip into my acrylic inks, and I'm doing my highlighting. Once again, it's really just a scumbled in middle value, and I'm able to pump it with the highlights on one side of it, and then pump the shadows on the other side of it if I want to, and you get, again, that form. You can also see that I introduced the same secondary light coming from behind, that warm light that was hitting the dragon earlier. Just a combination of using the brush and using the dip pen. All right, let's button this up. It's time to paint the face. You can see that I'm using like a 1/4 inch flat, and I'm scumbling in, again, that middle value, right? And you can see that the middle value that I'm scumbling in has a little bit of extra value to it. I warmed up the cheeks a little bit, I warmed up the lips a little bit, and then once that is established, what do you see me do before? I go in with the darks a little bit harder. And then in a moment here, I'm going to break out the lights and I'm going to go the other direction. Now, the thing I've discovered about faces, when I started thinking of it almost like I was putting makeup on somebody as opposed to like harsh brush strokes on somebody, my faces got a lot more subtle and I didn't have a lot of that like angularity and craziness going on. Let's go ahead and finish up the flag. You know, this was the plan, get the flowers down below and that red to match the flag so that red travels all the way up and then to the hair. We painted up the dragon fruit at the end of the staff, and we finished up the scales on the back piece of the dragon. And there it is, folks. All done. In summary, I just want to give you guys a little tour of the painting. We'll take the camera, we'll kind of wander over it a bit. But first I want to thank Wynwood Brewing for commissioning me to do this. I think a lot of artists have a beer label or some kind of beverage label on their bucket list of things they would like to do. And beyond that, the fact that Wynwood Brewery asked me to contribute to the actual flavor of the beer. They asked me what I wanted to do. I'm like, can you guys put dragon fruit in a beer? They're like, yeah, we can do that. I'm like, can you put blood orange in a beer? And they're like, oh yeah, we could do that. We'll have a little essence of it. And then they plussed it one step further by using like warrior hops and that kind of thing in it. So anyway, what a great opportunity, and it's a thrill to do it, and I thank them very much. Here's the finish. Again, folks, this is acrylic on cradled panel, and you can see that it's all about, for me, drawing while painting. So if we really get in here, you'll be able to see that even though from a distance it kind of looks like a buttery painting, when you get up on it, you can see tiny little cross hatching. And I think for me that came to be because for the longest time I was like using brushes, and I loved the way that the bristles would kind of splay out and give us some texture, and I wanted even more control over that. So I started doing these tiny little lines. But you can see that we got a blood orange down here. The brewery suggested let's do some hibiscus in the beer so that we would get that red color. And you can see I got some hops going on in the armor design. That's all hops in there. And then, of course, finally, we've got the dragon fruit up at the top. And, you know, what a treat. I can't wait to go down. I'm going to fly down to Miami and be there for the premiere of the beer. And can't wait to meet everybody. They're going to have posters of it down there and all that kind of stuff. So absolute treat. Thrilled I got to do it. And now I can cross that off my bucket list. I also want to thank you guys for watching these videos and coming along through the journey of this. Makes it easier to get through painting sometimes when I know there's viewers out there who will leave me the comments and all that kind of stuff. Much appreciated. This should be a rad can. It's called Blood of the Dragon beer, and it's going to be neat because I designed it so that the armor is going to be translucent, so you'll be able to see through it down to the aluminum can, and you'll get that reflected light. But we controlled that, kept it in certain areas, and some areas will be matte, some areas will be gloss, and it should be pretty wild. So I'll toast you guys when I actually hold one in my hands. Take care.